Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the entire electric vehicle industry, worth over $7 trillion, is suddenly outdated. Not improved, not upgraded, obsolete. Charging stations? Useless. Massive battery factories? Irrelevant. Hours-long plug-ins and range
Get the
anxiety.
shot, it's changing!
Gone. All because of one man, working quietly, far away from Silicon Valley, far away from billion-dollar boardrooms, building something the giants never saw coming. While the world obsessed over faster chargers and bigger batteries, Maxwell Chikumbutso was asking a completely different question. What if a car never needed charging at all? Not once, not ever. And that's where everything changed. Because if a vehicle can power itself, then the entire foundation of the EV industry collapses overnight. Think about it. Every charging network, every lithium mine, every battery supplier, every billion-dollar infrastructure project, all built on one assumption, that electric cars must stop to refuel. Maxwell didn't accept that rule, so he broke it. Reports began surfacing of strange prototypes, vehicles that kept driving for days, then weeks, with no charging cables, no swapping stations, no external power source. Engineers laughed at first. Impossible, they said. Physics doesn't allow that, they said. But then, test footage leaked. A sedan driving continuously, hour after hour. Telemetry showing zero drop in energy reserves. No plug, no fuel, no recharge. Just motion. Endless motion. And suddenly, the laughter stopped. Because if this technology was real, even partially real, it wouldn't just compete with EVs. It would erase them. Car companies spend billions solving battery problems. Maxwell removed the battery problem entirely. They fight over charging speed. He eliminated charging itself. They build larger grids and infrastructure. His vehicles don't even need the grid. It wasn't an upgrade. It was extinction-level disruption. Behind closed doors, executives began holding emergency meetings. Energy analysts started recalculating the future. Investors whispered one terrifying phrase: stranded assets. Trillions of dollars potentially stranded. And in a modest workshop thousands of miles away, Maxwell kept building. No flashy announcements. No marketing hype. Just machines. Quiet. Efficient. Self-sustaining. Then came the moment that changed everything. A live demonstration. A single car, parked in an open test field. No cables. No hidden infrastructure. Cameras rolling from every angle. Skeptics watching closely, waiting to expose the trick. Maxwell stepped forward, placed his hand on the hood, and said calmly, "Watch carefully." The car powered on. No sound. No vibration. Just a soft hum. It began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Circling the track. 1 lap. 2 laps. 10 laps. An hour passed. Then 2. Then 5. And the energy meter never moved. Not even a single percent. By sunset, the crowd wasn't talking anymore.
Get the shot, it's
They
changing!
were staring. Because what they were witnessing wasn't an experiment. It was the beginning of a collapse. Somewhere across the world, boardrooms were about to panic. Because if Maxwell's invention scaled, charging stations would become relics, battery plants would shut down, and the entire $7 trillion ecosystem would face something it had never prepared for. Not competition, replacement. And that's when the biggest automakers decided they couldn't ignore him anymore. Behind the scenes, calls started being made, offers, warnings, invitations, because everyone wanted the same thing: access, control, or silence. And Maxwell? He had just received a message that would change everything. The message didn't come through email. It wasn't a phone call either. It was quieter than that, more deliberate. A private invitation. No logos. No company names. No signatures. Just a location. A time. And 6 words. "We need to discuss your technology." Maxwell stared at it for a long moment, because he already knew what it meant. When industries get threatened, they don't watch. They react.
Fast.
Somewhere across the ocean, executives from the biggest automakers on Earth were sitting around polished glass tables. Companies like Tesla, Toyota, Volkswagen Group, and BYD Auto. Brands that had spent decades and trillions building the electric future. Battery plants the size of cities. Charging networks stretching across continents. Mining contracts.
Supply chains.
Government subsidies. Entire economies tied to one assumption. People must plug in their cars. But what happens when plugging in becomes unnecessary? Spreadsheets began to look terrifying. If Maxwell's system worked at scale, charging stations become empty parking lots. Power grids lose billions in projected demand. Battery factories turn into stranded concrete. Stocks wobble. Investors panic. And suddenly, one inventor in a small lab becomes the most dangerous variable in a $7 trillion equation. So they wanted answers. Or ownership. Or both. The meeting room was cold. Minimal.
Silent.
Across the table sat men and women in tailored suits, the kind of people who move markets with a single sentence. Maxwell walked in alone. No entourage. No lawyers. No presentation slides. Just a small metallic module in his hand. His power core. The thing they couldn't understand. They didn't waste time. How much? Straight to the point. No greetings. No compliments. How much to license the technology? Another voice followed. Or sell it. Another. We can integrate you into our system. Partner with us. Scale globally. Name your price. The numbers they mentioned were absurd. Hundreds of millions. Then billions. For most people, that would be the end of the story. But Maxwell didn't flinch. Because this was never about a payout. It was about independence. About eliminating dependence on infrastructure. About giving people energy freedom. If every car could power itself, entire regions without stable grids could finally move. Remote villages, rural towns, developing cities, mobility without permission, without waiting for charging stations, without billion-dollar networks. That idea scared them more than anything, because true self-sufficiency can't be controlled.
Get the
One
shot,
executive
it's
leaned
changing.
forward and said quietly, "You have to understand, this would destabilize the entire industry." Maxwell nodded. "I know." Silence filled the room. Not fear. Not doubt. Just certainty. Outside that building, the world kept moving normally. Cars charging. Stations buzzing. Factories producing millions of batteries. Completely unaware that inside this room, the future of transportation was being negotiated like a secret treaty. And back in his workshop, a new prototype was already waiting.
Smaller.
Lighter. More efficient. Capable of powering not just cars, but buses, trucks, maybe even entire homes. Because while corporations were trying to buy the present, Maxwell was already building the next leap. And if this version worked, it wouldn't just threaten electric vehicles anymore. It would threaten the entire energy economy itself. Back in his workshop, long after the meeting ended, the lights were still on. While billion-dollar executives flew home on private jets, Maxwell kept working. No security. No press. No announcement. Just tools, metal, and quiet concentration. Because he understood something they didn't. Technology doesn't wait for permission. And revolutions don't ask politely. On the workbench sat the next prototype. Smaller than before. Cleaner. More refined. No bulky battery pack. No complex cooling system. No charging port anywhere on the body. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just another car. But hidden beneath the frame was the heart of it all. A compact self-sustaining energy system that made the entire EV rulebook irrelevant. No lithium anxiety. No grid dependency. No charging queues. Just continuous motion. Day and night. Maxwell tightened the last bolt, stepped back, and quietly said, "Let's see how far you can go." The next morning, something unexpected happened. Someone leaked footage. Grainy at first. Shot on a phone. Uploaded anonymously. A car driving down an empty highway. Nothing special until the caption appeared. 72 hours. Still running. Never charged. At first, nobody believed it. Internet hoax, people said. Fake telemetry. Hidden cable. Marketing stunt. But then more clips surfaced. Different angles. Different locations. Same car. Still moving. Morning sunlight. Afternoon traffic. Midnight highways. No stops. No charging breaks. No refueling. Just endless motion. Forums exploded. Engineers started analyzing shadows and reflections frame
Look at
by
the
frame.
intensity of that light.
Energy experts
shot,
slowed
it's
down
changing.
the footage looking for tricks. They found nothing. Then tech bloggers picked it up. Then automotive channels. Then mainstream media. Suddenly headlines were everywhere. Self-powered cars spotted driving for days. Is charging about to become obsolete? Unknown inventor threatens EV giants. And just like that, Maxwell Chikumbutso was no longer invisible. His name started trending. Search traffic spiked overnight. Investors began calling analysts at 3 a.m. because markets don't fear rumors. They fear proof. And proof was now rolling down public highways for everyone to see. Charging station companies noticed something strange. Speculation.
Stock dips.
Hesitation. Because one terrifying question kept echoing through boardrooms. If this scales, what happens to us? Think about the math. Millions of charging points worldwide. Billions invested in battery factories. Entire cities redesigned around plug-in infrastructure. And now, one machine that doesn't need any of it. It wasn't competition anymore. It was replacement technology. Like smartphones replacing cameras. Like streaming replacing DVDs. Like digital replacing film.
Fast.
Brutal. Unstoppable. And Maxwell hadn't even officially launched anything yet. No press conference. No website. No pre-orders. Just prototypes quietly proving themselves in the real world. Which somehow made it scarier. Because if this was the early version, what would version 10 look like? Version 50? What happens when buses never charge? When trucks never stop? When entire fleets operate independently from the grid? What happens to oil? To batteries? To utilities? To the very idea of fuel? Late that night, Maxwell received another message. Not an invitation this time. Not an offer. Something else. Short.
Direct.
Almost urgent. We need to talk. Immediately. But this one came from a government energy authority. Not a company. Not investors. Governments. Because now it wasn't just about business anymore.
Get the shot,
It was about
changing.
national infrastructure, power grids, energy control, economic stability. And if his technology really worked the way it seemed, it wouldn't just disrupt the EV industry. It could rewrite the entire global energy system itself. And that's when Maxwell looked back at the prototype, realizing the next test wouldn't be private roads or empty highways anymore. This time, the whole world would be watching. By sunrise, the calls wouldn't stop. Government agencies, energy regulators, private investors, defense analysts, all asking the same question in different words. How real is it? Because if it was fake, they could ignore it. If it was exaggerated, they could delay it. But if it was real, everything changes. Power isn't just technology. Power is control. And whoever controls energy controls the future. For decades, nations built strategies around oil, then around batteries, then around charging infrastructure. Entire policies, alliances, trade deals, all built on dependence. But what Maxwell was building threatened dependence itself. A self-sustaining vehicle doesn't just save money. It breaks the system. No grid, no fuel chain, no centralized supply, just independence. And independence is unpredictable, which is why 3 days later, a closed-door request arrived. Not a suggestion, a directive,
Look at the
a public
intensity of that
verification
light.
event,
Get the shot,
a
it's
formal
changing.
test, neutral observers, engineers,
Scientists.
media. They wanted to see it with their own eyes. No cuts, No edits. No tricks. One car. One track. Unlimited scrutiny. Maxwell agreed instantly. Not because he wanted attention, but because he understood something simple. Once people see the truth themselves, you can't put it back in the box. The test site looked more like a military base than a racetrack. Drones overhead. Satellite vans lined up outside. Journalists whispering into microphones. Engineers carrying tablets and diagnostic tools. Every inch inspected. They scanned the vehicle top to bottom. Thermal cameras. X-rays. Signal detectors. Looking for hidden batteries. Wireless power feeds. Buried cables. Anything. They found nothing. No charging port. No external input. No visible fuel source.
Just a quiet machine. Simple.
Almost too simple. In the distance, cameras locked onto one figure standing calmly beside it. Maxwell Chikumbutso. No speech. No dramatic presentation. Just a nod. Start recording. The car powered on. A soft hum. Barely audible. It rolled forward onto the test circuit. Lap 1. Normal. Lap 5. Still normal. Analysts stared at the energy monitor. It didn't move. Lap 20. Whispers started. This has to be buffered storage. Maybe hidden capacitors. Wait longer. Hours passed. Sun climbed overhead. Heat shimmered on the asphalt. The car kept moving.
Smooth.
Effortless. Like time didn't apply to it. No degradation. No drop. Nothing. By hour 6, the press stopped talking. By hour 8, engineers stopped typing. By hour 10, you could feel the shift in the air. That quiet, uncomfortable realization. The kind that happens when a rule you've believed your entire life suddenly breaks in front of you. One official muttered under his breath. If this scales, charging stations are finished. Another replied, not just charging stations, everything. Because now the math was terrifyingly clear. If cars never needed charging, then why build chargers? Why mine lithium at this scale? Why upgrade grids? Why maintain billion-dollar infrastructure? $7 trillion, balanced on an assumption that had just been shattered. Meanwhile, the car kept circling. Hour 12, still running. And somewhere far away, stock tickers started flickering red. Investors reacting in real time, because markets had just witnessed proof. Not theory, not
Look
promise.
at the intensity of that
Proof.
light!
Get the
And
shot,
Maxwell,
it's changing!
he wasn't watching the screens. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was already sketching something new in a small notebook. A bigger platform, heavier load capacity, commercial scale. Because if this prototype could run forever, the next one wouldn't just power cars. It could power entire fleets, entire cities, maybe even something far beyond transportation itself. And just as the sun began to set, an alert popped up on every analyst's tablet. A number they didn't expect. A reading they couldn't explain. The system was showing energy output increasing, not decreasing, which meant the car wasn't just sustaining itself anymore. It might actually be generating excess power. At first, everyone thought the tablet readings were a glitch, a software bug, bad calibration, because what the numbers suggested made no sense. Engineers refreshed their screens, restarted diagnostics, swapped devices, ran independent instruments. Same result. Again, again, again. The vehicle wasn't draining energy. It wasn't holding steady either. It was climbing.
Slowly. Steadily.
Like a battery being charged. But nothing was connected. No cables. No wireless input. No solar panels large enough to explain it. Yet the system showed surplus energy accumulating while the car was moving. One analyst whispered, That's impossible.
Look at the intensity
Because
of
if
that
true,
light!
this
the
wasn't
shot,
just a
it's
self-sustaining
changing!
vehicle anymore.
Incredible!
It wasn't neutral. It wasn't zero consumption. It was positive, generating more energy than it used, which meant something far bigger, something far more dangerous to the old system. Imagine a car that powers itself and then has extra electricity left over. Where does that energy go? Back to the grid?
To your home?
To other vehicles? Suddenly, the question wasn't, how do we charge cars? It became, do we even need power plants for transportation anymore? And that thought terrified people, because entire nations are built around centralized energy, massive stations, controlled distribution, metered usage,
Bills.
taxes, dependence. But if every vehicle becomes a tiny moving generator, the entire structure flips upside down. Energy stops flowing from the top down. It flows everywhere, from everyone to everyone. Decentralized, uncontrollable,
Free.
and free is a word trillion-dollar industries hate. Across the world, financial terminals started reacting. Battery manufacturers dipped. Charging networks slid. Mining companies trembled. Analysts started using words like disruption event,
Look
market
at the intensity
collapse
of that
risk,
light.
Get the
structural
shot, it's
obsolescence.
changing!
Polite terms for something brutal. Extinction. Meanwhile, the car kept circling the track like nothing historic was happening. Quiet, effortless, mocking decades of engineering assumptions with every lap. Hour 15. Still running. Energy reserves higher than when it started. A reporter near the fence muttered into her mic. We might be watching the moment the EV era ends and something else begins. Not evolution. Replacement. Like horses to cars. Like film to digital. Like landlines to smartphones.
Fast. Sudden.
Final. Inside the observation tent, officials weren't celebrating innovation anymore. They were calculating consequences. If this goes public, what happens to the grid investments? What happens to national energy strategy? What happens to oil exports? What happens to trillions already spent? You could almost hear the silent panic. Because this wasn't just a better car. It was a technology that made half the global infrastructure unnecessary. And when infrastructure becomes unnecessary, so do the businesses tied to it.
So, do the jobs.
So do the power structures. One executive quietly stepped outside to make a call. Voice low. Urgent. We may be too late. Back near the track, Maxwell stood alone, hands behind his back, watching the sunset reflect off the moving vehicle.
Calm.
Like he expected this all along.
Look at the intensity
Like
of that
this
light.
wasn't the breakthrough.
Get the shot, it's
Just
changing!
the beginning. Because parked behind the test hangar, covered under a dark tarp, was something larger. Much larger. Not a sedan. Not a prototype car. Something the size of a transport truck. And if the small vehicle could generate surplus energy while moving, then whatever was under that tarp could change far more than transportation. It could power neighborhoods, factories, maybe entire cities, which meant the real demonstration hadn't even started yet. Technicians began walking toward the tarp, cameras turning, crowds shifting closer, and Maxwell finally stepped forward
Look at the
and said
intensity of that
quietly,
light.
"Now,
Get the shot,
let me
it's
show you the next
changing!"
one."